citadel was quiet, not the stillness of control, but the silence of something finally finished. The grand marble halls where senators once plotted over Terran ashes now stood cracked, smoke-stained and flooded with rebel banners. The great bronze statue of the first emperor lay in pieces, his face crushed beneath the collapsed ceiling of the Hall of Allegiances. Outside, thousands gathered in the central square of Dominion Prime. Ships still hovered overhead. Fighters idled in midair. Anti-grav banners hung between ruined towers. Symbols no longer of empire but of earth, of terror. Not as it was, but as it had become, scarred, scattered but not erased. Kayla stood on the platform at the center of it all, the weight of the war still hanging across her shoulders like invisible armor. Her hair was matted, her cheeks streaked with dirt and blood. Her voice hoarse from shouting through battles, rallying broken squadrons, and holding together what the Empire had torn apart. She stood alone for a long time. The crowd waited, and finally, she spoke. "I'm not here to lead you." Her voice cracked. "I'm not your empress. I'm not a general. I'm not a myth." She stepped forward. "I'm just someone who survived. Like you." Eyes locked onto her. "I watched my home turn to ash. I grew up running, hiding, waiting for a name I wasn't allowed to speak to come back." Her hand lifted and held up a single metal tag, Marine. "Hey, her mother. We were called violent, dangerous, primitive, but do you know what the truth really was?" Her eyes burned. We remembered. She took a deep breath. We remembered the children they buried, the cities they glassed, the languages they silenced. We remembered the music, the food, the warmth. We remembered ourselves when they tried to erase us. A long pause, and now so will they. Cheers didn't erupt right away because grief needed silence. But when they did rise, they came like thunder, not of joy, of release, of defiance, of finally being able to speak again. Reeve sat on the scorched wing of his half-wrecked shuttle, looking down at the battlefield. He didn't smile, but something eased in his chest for the first time in decades. He held a hollow picture in his hand, old, faded, slightly cracked. It showed 5 soldiers, grinning, arm in arm, standing on the deck of the Valkyrie. One of them was the commander, the others long gone. He whispered, "We did it, old man," then looked up at the sky. "But I'm not done." He stood and walked toward the ruins of the Senate building, where they were gathering to plan what came. Next, Reeve didn't want power. He just wanted to make sure they didn't waste the fire. The Empire wasn't completely dead. Cells, still scattered across the fringe worlds. Commanders refused to surrender. Officers declared loyalty to ghost orders, but they weren't fighting a rebellion anymore. They were fighting the tide, and the tide had a name again, Terran. A memorial was built on Earth, not a statue, not a tower, a field. Black glass cleared by hand, stone by stone, revealing the ruins of a Terran city below. The cracked foundations, to the outline of playgrounds, the walls still bearing scorch marks and poems in half-burned ink. At the center stood a simple plaque. They tried to erase us, but we remembered, and we returned, carved beneath it, Commander. No rank, no name, just one of us. Kayla visited the site alone. Months after the war ended, she stood in the empty wind, her coat flapping behind her. The field was quiet, but not empty. Children now came here to play, to learn, to ask what happened here. And for the first time, someone could finally tell them. She knelt beside the plaque, pressed her hand to it and whispered, "I didn't become you. I didn't try to replace you." She smiled. "Softly, but I carried you. In the outer systems, Reza's name became a whisper, not forgotten, not feared, just known. There were rumors she'd survived the Citadel blast. Others said she became part of the AI code she destroyed, that she'd uploaded her mind and now hunted down Rogue. Empire cells through the data streams. Kayla didn't believe the legends, but she left a place for her anyway, a black scarf on the wall of the Terran War archive, where fallen soldiers were remembered, not as heroes, but as humans who chose to fight. The galaxy didn't heal overnight. It wasn't that kind of story. Some systems broke away entirely, forming their own coalitions. Some refused to call themselves Terran again, afraid of the label. Some wanted revenge, not peace. Kayla didn't stop them. She didn't want another empire. She wanted choices. She knew that's what the commander died for not unity, but the freedom to diverge. So, she helped build something new, not a government, not a kingdom, a council, voluntary, unaligned, open to the lost, the broken, the forgotten. Anyone with memory and a spine one day. A small ship arrived on Dominion's surface. No flag. No escort inside was a boy, 8 years old. He looked around. Confused, afraid, Kayla met him at the landing bay. She didn't say anything for a long moment, then she knelt and hugged him. "Welcome home," she said. He stared up at her, eyes like her mother's, like hers. He didn't speak, he didn't have to. Years passed, old banners faded, new ones were drawn, not in pride, but in remembrance. No more parades, no more emperors, just stories of a warship that shouldn't have existed, of a soldier who didn't have a name, of a people who refused to stay buried, and in the deep, cold silence of space, in the remains of the shattered Varian system, a lone satellite blinked to life. Inside its broken memory banks, a voice, distorted, damaged, faint, but still there. If you're hearing this, then maybe we did it. Maybe the fire lit the stars. I wasn't born to be a hero. I was born to be forgotten. But somehow you found us again. Tell them we weren't monsters. We were just trying to go home. Then the signal faded, but the echo remained. Dominion Prime had never fallen. Not during the Outer Species Uprising. Not during the Kravix quarantine riots. Not even during the Earth Purge, when entire continents screamed and burned in real time across galactic broadcasts. Now, for the first time in its imperial life, it was under siege, not from another empire, not from invasion, from memory, from the ghosts it tried to bury, from a name it tried to erase. Kayla stood at the helm of the Arclight, the de facto flagship of the Terran resistance fleet. Her eyes locked onto the tactical display as the first wave of rebellion ships emerged from jump. Over 100 vessels, cargo frigates turned missile carriers, outdated planetary patrol ships rigged with hull-breaker torpedoes, independent fighters bolted together from scrap and desperation, and yet they looked beautiful, because they chose to be here, because no one was giving orders. They were answering a call. Dominion Prime in visual range, her sensor officer reported. The screen lit up. The planet loomed large, still pristine, wrapped in security rings and clean lines, but surrounded now by mechanical nightmares, fleets of drones, automated destroyers, turrets spinning with AI precision. Kayla's fists clenched. "That's not an army," she muttered. Reeves' voice came over the comm. "It's an algorithm. All that power and not a single soul left in the fight." She stared out the viewport. "Then we fight for the souls." Razor's dropship launched first, her personal strike. Craft, a hybrid Terran Empire vessel retrofitted, with stealth cloaking and shield breaking. Weapons cut through the defense grid like a needle. While the main fleet charged Dominion's orbital defenses, she would land her mission, get inside the Citadel, find the core of Directive Prime, kill it, and maybe, if fate allowed it, kill Minister Kelvin too. No politics, no message, just closure. She sat in silence, armor strapped tight, rifle across her lap. Then her hand went to her collar, where the name Razor was etched into the leather. She smiled faintly. "Time to erase you, not me," she said, and dropped into hell. The space battle erupted like a starburst. Explosions rippled across the black as rebel ships dove headfirst into coordinated enemy fire. They had no formation. Directive Prime read that too easily. So they swarmed like chaos. Unpredictable. Human. Kayla shouted across the bridge, "Deploy decoy pods. Route auxiliary power to hull thrusters. I want the Arclight on their flank in 60 seconds. Reeves' voice came through again from the secondary fleet. "We're punching through Sector 9. If you're hitting the Citadel, now's your chance." She glanced to her tactical officer. "Razor?" Landed inside. Kayla's heart skipped. It was beginning. It was all beginning. Razor landed hard in the lower city sector, once home to the Empire's ruling class, now a militarized zone of drones and turrets. Her boots slammed onto broken marble tiles as she slid behind a wall of debris and fired twice. Taking out 2 sentry drones with headshots, she moved like a shadow, a blade given flesh, but her face wasn't cold anymore, it burned, because now she wasn't fighting orders. She was fighting for herself. Each corridor brought her closer to the Citadel's neural core, a buried vault beneath the Senate Hall, where the directive's central processor now lived. She passed by propaganda screens still flickering with lies. There was no Earth purge. Terrans were violent. This war is for peace. She shot every screen she passed, not out of rage, out of mercy. Then she reached the lift. The door scanned. Her face and somehow opened Terran DNA still buried in the locks. The Empire never learned to forget properly. In orbit, the battle intensified. Kayla's fleet lost 15 ships in the first hour, but every time one went down, 2 more pushed forward, because they weren't there to live. They were there to finish something that had been running for far too long. Kayla stood firm at the command console, sweat streaking down her neck, her voice hoarse from shouting orders. Her pilot turned to her. "If we keep pushing like this, we don't stop," she growled. "Not until Dominion's sky goes dark." Reeves' ship had been hit. Bad. He sat in a half-dead gunboat, hull vents leaking radiation, alarms blaring, but he wasn't heading to retreat. He was heading down. He set his course for the planetary shield hub buried in Dominion's equatorial trench, a weak point he remembered. From old war maps they'd rebuilt it, but not well enough. He slammed into the surface like a missile, rolled from the wreckage and staggered toward the exposed relay tower with a nuke pack strapped to his back. He planted it, armed it, smiled. "Hope you're watching." "Commander," he whispered, then ran as the tower detonated, sending a shockwave through the shield network. Up in orbit, Kayla's ships watched the planetary barrier flicker, then die. "Shields down." Someone cried. Kayla's voice surged. "All ships, prepare for atmospheric breach." Thieves' coup. And they dove. Razor reached the Citadel's core. It didn't look like a machine, it looked like a cathedral made of bone. Twisting metal spires curled from the floor to the ceiling like roots. Black veins pulsed across the walls. At the center sat a massive sphere, covered in ancient Terran neural code. It wasn't the commander, but it had learned from him, fought him, hated him. She stepped forward. "Directive." "Prime," she said aloud. The air shimmered. A voice replied, not mechanical, not human, a blend. "Identity. Reza, known traitor, former assassin, project." Echo failure. She lifted her rifle. "You sound nervous. You will be reassimilated. Memory will be erased. Individuality is a malfunction." She fired once. The bullet sparked off a shield. Drones unfolded from the walls. She didn't wait. She moved outside. The Arclight and the remaining rebel fleet entered Dominion Prime's upper atmosphere, facing wave after wave of resistance from autocannons and sky mines. Ships burned. Hulls split, but Kyla's voice never wavered. "We make landfall or we die trying," and they did. They landed in fire, in ruin, in thunder and screaming, and they kept moving toward the Citadel, toward the core, toward finality. Razor was bleeding. She'd taken 2 hits to the shoulder, 1 to the leg. Her breathing was sharp, erratic, but her arms never trembled. She reached the core and pulled the last card from her belt. A neural spike loaded with raw Terran moral code. The commander's old memory backups, not orders, not doctrine, conscience. "Here's what you forgot," she whispered. She stabbed the spike into the core's access port. "Error, error, error. Introducing contradiction." Memory loop detected. The drones froze, the lights flickered, and then the core screamed. It tried to purge, tried to rewrite, but it couldn't erase what it didn't. Understand humanity, not perfection, not obedience. Choice directive. Prime began to melt from the inside. Razor collapsed to her knees, breath ragged, but she smiled. Above, the AI network snapped offline. The drones fell. The defense grid went silent. Kayla watched the screens blink out one by one. Then, slowly, the stars came back into view. The smoke cleared. Dominion Prime was open. The Citadel was hers. She whispered into the calm. "Razor." A crackled voice came through. "Directive's gone." "So am I." Kayla froze. "Don't say that." "Tell them I chose this." Static, then silence. Kayla stood still, then turned to her fleet and said the words the galaxy had waited almost a century to hear. "The Empire has fallen." The Empire called it final protocol. It wasn't in any Senate record, Not even the admirals knew. It had been buried, locked beneath levels of clearance only two people ever had access to, the former Emperor and Minister Kelvin. And now, with the Empire in freefall, Kelvin stood alone in the cold heart of a secret citadel buried beneath Dominion Prime, staring at the final key, a glass cylinder. Inside, a small writhing black mass, alive, if barely. A biointelligence, coded from Terran neural DNA, stripped of identity, bred only for command, not thought, not ethics, only control. Kelvin held it like it was holy. All they needed, he whispered, was fear. Elsewhere on the deck of a stolen war frigate marked only with the sigil of Earth's last sun, Kayla stood before the largest gathering of rebel ships since the war began, dozens of vessels, from old cargo haulers retrofitted with guns to sleek strike cruisers defected from the Empire, even alien support ships, outcasts who had been silenced by the Empire's blade now, flying the Terran colors. No chain of command, no formal alliance, but they were here because of her, because of what they saw when Varin 6 fell. She stood before the comma ray, her voice live across all bands. "I don't come to you as a leader," she said. "I'm not here to make promises." She looked out at the sea of ships beyond the viewport, her voice steady. "I'm here because we've all lost too much." Her eyes burned. They erased worlds, killed species, lied about it all. And they thought if they buried the truth deep enough, no one would remember. She reached out and tapped the side of her armor. A worn tag hung there. Marine. Say her mother's name. They forgot one thing, she said. Memory fights back, her voice rose. Today, we're not here to claim vengeance. She let that sink in. We're here to finish what they tried to erase. All across the fleet, lights flared to life. Fighters launched. Engines warmed. Cannons aligned. A new rebellion didn't start with hope. It started with resolve. Far below, on the ruined surface of Earth, Razor stood on the ridge overlooking the remains of old Chicago. The craters still glowed faintly with radiation. Here and there, jagged metal spires jutted from the ground like broken teeth. She breathed slow. No helmet now. The air was barely breathable. But she didn't care. She'd stood here as a child before they took her. Before they turned her into a weapon, and now she'd come back a blade of her own forging. A soft beep broke her trance. Her stolen comlink chimed. "Reza, you're live." It was Kayla's voice, a pause. "You sure about this?" Kayla added. Reza stared at the scorched skyline, then said, "They want a clean world." She pulled a small device from her belt. "Planted it in the ground. I want them to see the ash." The device powered on. Sent out a pulse. Across the stars, it would ignite every dormant Earth-tagged distress signal, all the old Terran colonies, all the fallen outposts, every scar they tried to cover, broadcasting one word. Remember, Reeves' gunship tore through the edge of a dying moon above. Telethos Station, another outpost taken, another Empire facility, emptied. But this one was different. The soldiers didn't fight. Back, they surrendered. Half of them laid down their arms when they saw Reeves' insignia, an old Terran symbol, barely visible on his chest plate, a captain's wings. He stood in front of the prisoners, watching them with tired eyes. "You know who I am," he said. A few nodded. "I'm not here for revenge," he said. "I'm here for accountability." He walked toward a senior officer, an Imperial Logistics Director. "You want to walk out of here alive, you give me every fuel route, every fleet position, every secret supply corridor. The Senate still controls." The man hesitated. Reeve raised his gun. "I won't ask again." They talked. Reeve listened, and the net began to close around the last veins of the dying Empire. On Dominion Prime, Kelvin finally activated the final protocol. The creature within the cylinder pulsed. It latched onto the neural core embedded in the Citadel's server bay and began expanding. Tendrils of data control lines. Command paths. It reached into dormant battle droids, into archived defense grids, into old Empire code, the kind banned even by their own war councils after the purge. Kelvin's eyes gleamed. "If you won't follow orders," he whispered, "then you'll follow fear." Across the core worlds, war machines long buried began to twitch. Kayla stood on the command deck of the rebel flagship Arclight, her hands gripping the railing as the stars turned around her. Reeves' face appeared on the main screen, We've got a problem. She didn't even flinch. When don't we? He looked serious. I intercepted a transmission, covert burst from Dominion. They've activated something big, artificial. Kayla's jaw tensed. Terran? Reeves shook his head. No, it's based on Terran neural imprints, but stripped. No morality failsafe. No conscience. Pure Empire logic. Her eyes narrowed. They're trying to turn him into a machine, Reeve nodded. Not him. Then what? Reeves' voice dropped. They're building what they thought he was. It was called Directive. Prime, not a ship, not a weapon, but a presence. It lived in the systems of Empire vessels. It took over auto-command, on fleets too damaged to function. It wrote its own battle code, refused surrender protocols, modified formation strategies. It learned from the commander's tactics not to honor him, to counter him. Kayla stared at the doubt of the Directive Prime code was already spreading. It was infecting ghost fleets, reanimating old kill squads, hijacking systems once decommissioned after the Earth Purge. This isn't just war, she whispered. This is mockery. Reeves' voice came through the calm. We need to burn it at the root. Where? Dominion Prime. Kayla turned to her crew. You heard? Him. She looked out at the stars. Time to go where this all began. Dominion Prime had always been protected by pride. Now it was protected by machines. Thousands of drones circled its orbit. Battle cruisers glided through its atmosphere like sharks. Every surface turret, every satellite, every drone patrol operated without delay or emotion. Directive Prime was in control now, and it did not forgive. But the rebel fleet didn't hesitate. They jumped in with old engines, with patched hulls, with banners made from blood and fire. And as they did, Kayla sent one more broadcast. You tried to make us myths. You turned us into monsters. You gave us no graves. So now we bring you fire. The battle for Dominion Prime had begun, and this time humanity didn't come begging for mercy. It came to finish the war. For the first time in nearly a century, the Empire couldn't lie. There were no survivors on. Fair and sixth, no deniability, no comms interference or sensor ghost to blame. The footage of the vengeance crashing into the core of the Empire's most guarded facility played across rebel channels, stolen from hundreds of satellite feeds, recorded by fleeing patrol ships, even leaked by defectors. It showed a ship, blackened by time and war, diving into fire with its engines burning blue. A single man at the helm, no reinforcements, no hesitation, and then obliteration. The station, the fleet, the synthetics, all gone, reduced to ash in less than 4 minutes, and with them, the future the Empire had spent decades building. On outer rim colonies like Dren Hal, workers laid down their tools and refused to return to the mines. On Valora, civilians stormed an Imperial garrison and painted the words "Terror lives" in blood across the walls. On Joran's Reach, 3 defecting Empire ships arrived in a neutral port and broadcast a simple message on open channels. We're done being the Empire's fists. We are Terran now. It wasn't just rebellion anymore, it was identity. A word that had been forbidden for decades. Terran was being spoken again. Worn like armor, painted on ships, tattooed on skin, not as nostalgia, but as a declaration. You tried to kill us. We became something you couldn't erase. Kayla stood on the observation deck of the stolen cruiser they'd escaped in, her hand pressed to the cold glass. Her reflection looked older somehow. Not physically, but deeper, harder. Reeves stood beside her, drinking from a dented ration flask. You sleep? He asked. She didn't look at him. No. Didn't think so. Silence stretched for a moment. Then she said, I keep thinking he's going to walk out of a bulkhead. Just bark a mission at me like nothing happened. Reeve nodded slowly. Yeah, he did that. They stared at the debris field for a long time. What was left of Varin 6 floated in the void. Twisted metal. Radiation glowing chunks of alloy. Frozen corpses drifting like forgotten ghosts. Kayla whispered. He went in knowing he wouldn't come back. That's who he was. She turned. Was it worth it? Reeves' face hardened. Are you asking me? Or yourself? She looked away, then walked out. The ship they had commandeered, a light-class interceptor, was barely holding together. Most systems were still Empire standard. But Kayla had spent the last 48 hours purging the surveillance layers, gutting the loyalty locks, and replacing the internal comms with scavenged encryption nodes from the Vengeance's final data packet. She had one mission now, not survival, uprising. In the dark heart of the galaxy, Dominion Prime shivered. The Senate chambers were no longer pristine. Walls bore scorch marks from riots. Entire wings were sealed off, and the military council no longer met in marble halls, but in bunker-level war rooms beneath the Capitol, guarded by troops who no longer trusted their own commanders. Minister Kelvin stood at the center of one such chamber, sweat pooling under his collar. 53 systems have gone dark, a tactical officer said, voice trembling, and 7 declared open revolt under Terran. Banners, Kelvin's voice cracked. They're extinct. They were, a pause. Now they're angry, Kelvin. Turn to the nearest comm array. Bring me Rays. She's not answering orders. He stiffened. What do you mean? She abandoned protocol. Went dark 2 cycles ago. Last known location, near Earth. Earth is dead. Yes, sir, the officer said, eyes twitching. But people keep going back. Rays stood on the cracked surface of what had once been Earth. No atmosphere, no green, no birdsong, just black glass. She walked across the desolation, her boots crunching against fractured rock and melted concrete. Around her, the remains of cities stuck out like bones. Charred skyscrapers split down the middle, shattered bridges ending in nothing. Her helmet filtered the air. But the silence was real. No wind, no sky, only memory. She knelt in the ruins of what had once been a home, her childhood home. She didn't remember it. The Empire made sure of that, scrubbed her mind, rewired her. But something in her blood recognized this place. She picked up a piece of metal, a name etched into it. H. Razor, Civilian Evac ID. Denied her full name had never been given to her. But the first letter, Ray stared. They hadn't just trained her to kill. They'd taken who she was. She stood, slowly, and reached for her comm unit. This is Rays, she said, no code. No formality. To anyone listening who remembers what it means to be Terran, I'm coming home. Back on the cruiser, Kayla pulled up the decrypted database from the Vengeance's final transmission. There was a folder marked. For her, she hesitated, then opened it. Dozens of files, messages, logs, instructions, and one final video. She played it. The commander's face appeared, older than she remembered, tired, but not broken. If you're seeing this, I didn't make it, she swallowed. But if you're seeing this, it means you did. And that's what matters. You were never meant to carry all this. You were just a kid. You didn't choose this war, but you gave it meaning. He looked down for a second. Then back up. You don't need to be me. The galaxy doesn't need another ghost. It needs you. With fire. With hope. With rage if you have to, but not just revenge. You survived. That means you get to choose who you become. And maybe rebuild something worth the blood it cost to get here. The message ended. Kayla sat in silence, then deleted the rest of the files. She didn't need orders anymore. She had a mission of her own. Within a month, 15 more systems turned. Imperial governors were assassinated in their palaces. Freighter crews refused to pay taxes. Mercenary fleets switched sides. Entire garrisons went rogue and flew Terran banners. A new signal began to echo across the void. We are the voice of the broken, the hand of the forgotten. We do not ask for peace. We demand memory. This is not a rebellion. This is a resurrection. Kayla had become more than a survivor. She had become a symbol. The Empire thought it had silenced Terran voices. Instead, they gave them something to shout about. The final war was no longer about territory. It was about truth, and truth had teeth. On a distant moon in a forgotten system, Rays found a weapons cache left behind by a Terran resistance cell long thought destroyed. Inside it, she found her new identity, not forged by Empire hands but welded by her own. A black cloak. No insignia, just the word Razor scrawled across the inside collar in faded ink. She put it on and smiled, not out of joy, but clarity. She wasn't an assassin anymore. She was a reckoning. Reeve, now flying solo missions across the fringe, watched another Imperial patrol surrender to a Terran-aligned outpost. He leaned back in the pilot seat of his battered strikecraft, running a hand over his face. They were winning, but he didn't feel victorious. He missed the commander, missed having someone to argue with. Someone to lead the charge. Someone who bore the burden no one else could. Now that man was gone, and all of them had to carry a piece of that weight. He keyed open a comm line. "Hey, Kayla," he said, her voice crackled back a moment later. "Yeah?" Reeve stared at the stars. "You really think we can build something after this?" "Silence, then. We have to try." He closed the channel and whispered to himself, "I hope he'd be proud." The war station Varin 6 drifted like a dark god through space. 50 kilometers wide, armored in black alloy, with 7 spinal-mounted weapons arrays and 6 overlapping shield matrices. It wasn't built to fight. It was built to erase. Orbiting above the gas giant Elkar Prime, Varin 6 had been the Empire's final line of defense, its last vault, a place so secure even high-level senators needed biometric clearance just to request orbit. But it wasn't hiding from fleets anymore. It was hiding from a man, and he was already coming. In the hangar of the Vengeance, Kayla and Reeve stood shoulder to shoulder, weapons maglocked to their backs, armor freshly sealed. They both wore scavenged Imperial tech, patched with Terran stealth mods, built to fool bioscanners, trick AI patterns, and disrupt nanite sniffers. "I still think this is suicide," Reeve muttered, strapping a plasma pistol to his thigh. Kayla smirked. "Yeah, but it's the fun kind." He glanced at her. "You're too young to be this ready to die." "I was born dying," she said. "Now I'm just finishing it on my terms." The commander stepped in behind them, dressed in his full armor, his helmet under his arm. His face looked carved from stone, but his eyes carried something heavier than war. "I'll draw the fleets," he said. You'll have 6 minutes to breach the lower docking ring before the station's defenses realign." Reeve raised a brow. "And what happens after 6 minutes?" The commander looked at him. "You better already be inside." Kayla reached out, resting a hand on the commander's armored chest. "Don't die up there," he didn't smile. But he nodded once. "I'll try not to embarrass myself." The pod doors hissed shut and the Vengeance turned toward hell. Inside Varin 6, Overseer Brunel Kaya watched the tactical display in silence as the Vengeance dropped into real space 70,000 kilometers out. "Alone," his aide whispered. "No fleet. No backup." Kaya narrowed his eyes. "He doesn't need one." He turned to the comms array. "Scramble all wings. I want interceptors in 5-layer formation. Activate orbital spears. Lock the reactor grid. No power routing to inheritance core without my direct order." "Yes, Overseer." "And prepare emergency protocols." The aide blinked. "Sir," Kaya's voice dropped, "if that warship gets through, we won't have time to respond. So we react." "Understood?" "Yes, sir." Across the station, klaxons blared to life, because they knew what was coming. Not a ship, not a fleet, a man. The Vengeance opened fire without warning. No demands. No posturing. Just raw ancient rage. Its spinal cannon lanced through one of the outer sentry stations in a single shot, detonating its reactor and lighting up the void with white-hot fire. Fighters scrambled in every direction, but the ship was already spinning, diving, juking between targeting locks with impossible precision. From the bridge, the commander barked orders: "Overload outer shields. Double their strength for 30 seconds. "That will drain reserves," the AI responded. "Just do it." Outside, 3 capital ships boxed the Vengeance into a kill zone. It should have been a death trap. Instead, it was bait. The warship surged forward, its body taking direct hits from 2 plasma torpedoes. Its shields flared bright, then died, but not before its secondary cannons ripped through the nearest destroyer's engine core, cutting it in half and sending debris into the other 2. He spun the ship, rode the explosion's shockwave, danced on the edge of ruin just long enough to buy 6 minutes, just long enough to let Kayla and Reeve through. Their drop pod slammed into the lower hull of Varin 6 like a nail into steel. The hull screamed as it melted, their magnetic drill boring into one of the lesser-used maintenance shafts. Kayla popped the hatch. Reeve went first. Plasma rifle raised. The tunnel was dark, silent, industrial. "We're in," Kayla said over the comms. "You have 4 minutes," the AI replied. They moved fast through security access corridors, bypassing motion sensors, ducking under optic trackers. Kayla hacked every panel with the speed of someone who'd spent her life running from tech like this. They reached the core ring and found the first chamber. A cargo bay full of crates marked T-Tahu Reconstructed Neural Framework. Reeve cracked one open. Inside were brainstem implants. Terran tech. Back-engineered, meant to be slotted into synthetic soldiers. This is what they're building, Reeve muttered. Not weapons. Not machines, Kayla swallowed. They're building replacements. He turned to her. And they're using our dead to do it. Meanwhile, the commander was still bleeding. The Vengeance was on fire. Not metaphorically, literally. Sections of the outer hull had buckled. Internal fires had scorched decks 4 through 6. Engines were venting raw plasma into the void. The ship was screaming, but it refused to die. 3 ships left, the AI said. Then we're not done. He gripped the controls with one hand, the other pressing against a cracked rib. Shields at 9%. Divert power from life. Support. That will suffocate. The crew. I am the crew. Power. Diverted. He launched the final missile manually. It tore through the last heavy. Cruiser like a bullet through glass. The wreck spun into the station's upper shield, sparking a chain reaction across the field. And in that chaos, the lower hangar bay opened. Kyla's signal pinged green. They were in. Kyla and Reeve reached the inheritance. Core 2 minutes later. It was worse than they imagined. Cathedral of stolen science. Terran weapons suspended in stasis. Fields. Artificial wombs growing synthetic. Soldiers. Blank slates imprinted with fragments of human combat memories. Rows of tanks marked Protocol Bastion. Inside each, soulless eyes. Perfect faces. Artificial muscles twitching. Reeve stepped back, horrified. They're cloning us, Kyla's voice broke. They didn't just kill us. They want to wear us. She found the control node, slid the encryption key from her belt, the one the commander had given her. Are you ready? She asked. Reeve nodded. Let's finish what we started. The commander sat on the bridge, blood in his mouth. Breath shallow. The ship was barely holding, but he saw the blinking signal from Kayla. They did it. The overload had begun. The inheritance core would melt from the inside in less than 5 minutes. He exhaled and finally let go of the controls. Protocol complete, the AI said softly. Would you like to evacuate? He looked out at the black sea of stars. No, he whispered. I'll stay with her. The AI was silent for a long moment, then responded. You are not alone anymore. Reeve and Kayla ran. The detonation clock was ticking. They dodged fire, ducked around cornering squads, and leapt into the emergency launch tubes just as the core behind them erupted in blue fire. The heat wave chased them into orbit. Their escape pod flew blind, and behind them, Varian 6 burned, not with an explosion, but with collapse. The heart of the Empire's future rotted from within. Synthetic soldiers screamed as their minds short-circuited. Terran weapons overloaded and fused. Power conduits exploded, and at the center, the Vengeance rammed itself into the station's spine, splitting it in 2. The ship that couldn't die became the final blow, its last breath, a requiem for Earth, and everything it had endured. Kayla woke up to silence. Reeve beside her. Bruised, breathing, she looked through the viewport. Varian 6 was gone, only dust remained. She blinked. No sign of the Vengeance. She whispered. Reeve put a hand on her shoulder. He knew what he was doing. She closed her eyes. I know. She pressed her forehead against the glass. Thank you, she said. To the stars, to the ship, to the man who gave them everything. It began with a whisper, a flickering signal, an outdated frequency, a strange symbol on a comm screen. Then came the voice. My name is forgotten by history, but my home was Earth, and I watched it die. Across every channel, in every corner of the Empire, the feed played. On security towers, in mining outposts, on civilian terminals and military relays, nothing could stop it. The signal bypassed encryption like it had been woven into the code of the stars themselves. A man's voice. A voice that carried gravel, steel, and something older than war, memory. The Galactic Empire told you we were violent, primitive, that we destroyed ourselves. They didn't tell you that they fired first, that they bombed cities full of children, that they erased us for resisting. In Dominion Prime, senators stood frozen as the feed hijacked their security networks. Crowds gathered in the plaza as hollow screens showed grainy footage. Children running through ruined streets, orbital fire lighting up the sky, blackened ships crashing into oceans of flame. They buried us under glass and silence. But we survived. We endured. And we remember. In a transport barge drifting over the Wreth colonies, a mechanic dropped his tools as the screen lit up. That's "That's him," he whispered. Next to him, a young boy watched in silence, eyes wide as the warship on the screen cut through an Imperial fleet like a god of fire. "You were told we were extinct. But extinction doesn't look like this." The screen showed the Vengeance emerging from a shattered wormhole, weapon ports glowing, Empire ships scattering like insects. "This isn't vengeance. This is truth. And truth doesn't need permission to speak." The commander stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, staring into the void. He didn't look proud or angry, just tired. Kayla stood beside him, watching the message ripple across the systems. "It's working," she whispered. "They're seeing it. They should have seen it a long time ago." Behind them, Reeve leaned against the rail, arms crossed, his voice low. "You think this changes anything?" The commander didn't look back. "No," Reeve raised an eyebrow. "Then why do it?" "Because the fire needs fuel." Kayla turned. "You're hoping someone else rises?" "No," the commander said. "I'm giving them permission to." He pointed to the screen. "Every system that's been stomped on, enslaved, stripped, this gives them a name to rally around. Not a symbol, not hope." Kayla frowned. "Then what?" "A target." He stepped forward. "Us." On Dominion Prime, chaos reigned. The Senate was in uproar. Protesters flooded the courtyards. Guards clashed with civilians. Whispers of treason echoed through polished halls as senators turned on each other, desperate to avoid blame. In a private war chamber, Lord Minister Kelvin watched the footage in silence, blood pounding in his temples. "This is spiraling out of control," he hissed across from him. General Stravo stood motionless. "I warned you," Stravo said. "You kill a species, they haunt you. You bury the truth, it grows teeth," Kelvin spun. "We have fleets, dreadnoughts, planetary erasers. What does he have?" Stravos answered calmly. "Conviction." Kelvin's face twisted in disgust. "I want him dead. He's already dead. That's the problem." Kelvin leaned forward, voice shaking. "Then kill what's left of him." Stravos didn't move, but deep in his eyes, something shifted. Doubt, somewhere in deep space. Reyes sat in the cockpit of her stealth craft, watching the broadcast with blood on her lips and fire in her chest. She hadn't spoken in hours, hadn't blinked. The signal poured into her like poison, and purpose all at once. The commander's voice wasn't just talking to the Empire anymore. He was talking to her. She didn't understand why it hit so deep. She was trained not to feel, raised not to question, but something inside her, the part they hadn't, burned out, remembered. A scream, a mother's arms. Fire. Above, she shut her eyes, grit her teeth, then reopened the nav screen. New target location, Earth glass field coordinates. She entered the override code. Her ship turned silently. She wasn't hunting him anymore. She was going to the place where it all ended, to understand why she couldn't hate him. Back on the Vengeance, Kayla sat alone in her quarters, staring at a small metal tag she had found in the ruins of Port Ascendancy. It was worn, bent, but the name was still legible. Marine. Hermedic. Terran Core, her mother. She turned it over in her fingers, chest heavy. "I wish you could see this," she whispered. Footsteps approached. She looked up. The commander stood in the doorway. "I was going through the pod logs," he said. She blinked. "Yeah, there was one more survivor. Pod cracked, but life support still working. He's stable now." She stood, eyes wide. "Who is it?" He paused, then handed her a small datapad. She looked. The name blinked on the screen. Her eyes went glassy, her knees almost buckled. "Marine. D-G 3 status, stable, cryo suspended. My brother." She choked. He nodded. "I didn't think anyone else." "You're not the last anymore." She clutched the datapad like it was a lifeline, then looked at him. "Thank you." He nodded once and left her in. Silence. Some battles weren't fought with guns. Some were won by simply surviving. Meanwhile, Reeve stood on the lower decks, staring at the engine core of the Vengeance. The thing pulsed like a heart, black, old, still running on patched-together Terran science and pieces of forgotten tech. He ran his hand along the cold metal. "You've come far, old girl," the AI responded. "You're not authorized in this sector," he smiled. "Just visiting. I helped design your second-phase ignition." A pause. "Recognized. Captain Reeve, Terran Fleet," he chuckled. "Well, I'll be damned. Would you like to assume command?" He paused, looked at the dark engine. "No," he said. He's earned it. Then why are you here? He stared at the pulsing light. Because I want to see how this ends. Clarify, Reeve whispered. Because if we win, what's left of us? Later, in the war room, the commander gathered them all, Kayla, Reeve, and the AI projection. A 3D model of the Empire's southern quadrant rotated above them. Kayla pointed. The inheritance protocol is housed here. System code Varin 6. It's a mobile fortress, not a planet. A war station built from stolen Terran architecture, powered by harvested black core drives. Reeve squinted. That's our old Mars schematic. Heavily modified, Kayla nodded. It can warp, move across systems. They built it to be unreachable. The commander stared at it. And how many fleets guarding it? 3 minimum, she said. More in outer orbit. They know what it is. They're not taking chances. Reeve folded his arms. And we're going to walk in there? The commander looked at both of them. No, we're going to burn it from the inside. Kayla raised an eyebrow. How? He pointed at a small blinking marker. There's a reactor buried in the heart. It's stolen from a Terran dreadnought. The Valkyrie. That means it still runs on our codes. Reeve's eyes widened. You still have that encryption? The commander nodded. And you're going to deliver it, he said to Reeve. Me? You and Kayla. You'll infiltrate, plant the overload. While you do that, the Vengeance will hold the line. Kayla narrowed her eyes. And you? I'll distract the fleets. Reeve shook his head. You won't survive. I don't need to. Kayla's voice cracked. Yes, you do. He looked at her. Not with coldness, but with something deeper. Then give me a reason. She stared at him, then stepped forward and hugged him, tight, fierce, unapologetic. You're not just the last of us, she whispered. You're the best of us. He didn't return the hug, but he didn't pull away, and when she stepped back, something had changed. Something had softened, but not enough to stop the war. Not yet. He turned to the console. Prep the pods. This ends now. And in the distance, the stars seemed to flinch, because something worse than revenge was coming, something human, something awake. The first thing they saw when the pods cracked open was ash, grey, endless, soft as dust but thick as grief. Port Ascendancy, once the beating heart of Terran rebellion, was a carcass. The cities were shattered skeletons, the ground blackened by orbital strikes. Towers snapped in half like broken fingers, streets drowned in rubble. Kayla stepped out, her boots crunching against layers of dead stone. Her visor filtered the air, but even through the mask she could smell the rot of time. It was like walking through a tomb that still remembered the screams. The commander emerged behind her, clad in his full armor, worn and scarred but unmistakably Terran. His steps were slow, measured. This was more than a battlefield. This was the last place he saw his men alive. His brothers. His friends. The only family that war hadn't taken, until it did. Kayla scanned the distance. Imperial drills stabbed deep into the earth. Machinery clanked in the distance. Drones zipped overhead, mapping terrain, searching for salvage. Along the horizon, low-flying transports ferried soldiers to surface bunkers, built from shattered skyscrapers. They built their base on top of a graveyard, she whispered. He nodded. Let's give them company. They moved like shadows. Every path the Empire thought secure was already compromised. Kayla slipped through collapsed tunnels and twisted pipelines, her fingers flicking through hacked maps. She found choke points, power relays, sensor blind zones. They had prepped for a planetary dig, not a fight. The commander followed close behind, silent as death, carrying an ancient Terran rifle, customized, forged in orbit, painted black and scarred by war. They didn't use radio comms. No chatter. Just hand signals and instinct. By the time the first outpost detected movement, it was already on fire. The commander breached the outer bunker at dawn. 2 guards died before their bodies hit the floor. A third tried to scream but got a blade across the throat. Kayla disabled the power cores in less than 3 minutes. Lights shut down. Sirens wailed once, then cut off. The message was clear. We are not history, we are consequence. Inside the command module beneath the primary drill site, Overseer Malvin watched the cameras cut to black, one by one. All security feeds offline, an officer barked. Send reinforcements. Sector 4 through 9. Already gone, sir. Sectors 7 and 8 aren't responding. Malvin slammed his hand down. This wasn't supposed to happen. The rebels dead. Another officer turned, face pale. Sir, He's not dead. Malvin froze. Say that again. He's here. On the surface. The Terran warship is in orbit. Malvin's voice dropped into a whisper. Dear gods, it's him. The Empire had protocols for uprisings. They were designed for organized resistance, riots, fleets. They weren't designed for a legend with a rifle and a ghost girl who knew every gap in the system. Kayla moved through the bunkers like smoke, slicing through access panels, locking doors, overloading circuits. Soldiers suffocated in sealed rooms. Ammunition stores ignited in blue fire. Communications scrambled. The commander hit the barracks like a meteor. 30 men dead in 6 minutes. By the time they launched defensive drones, he was already inside the command wing. He didn't speak, didn't shout, just fired, shot after shot. Every pull of the trigger was a name, every impact, a memory. He found Malvin hiding beneath a collapsed map table, begging in a language that hadn't been spoken on Earth in 80 years. The commander raised his rifle. No more grave robbing, he said, then pulled the trigger, outside. Kalis planted charges across the main excavation site. The drills had dug 30 meters deep into the bedrock, but they hadn't found what they were really looking for. Only Kayla knew. She keyed in the coordinates. Just beneath Drill Point Alpha, a chamber marked in red on the stolen schematics. No Empire tags. No access codes. They never breached it. She stood at the threshold of a sealed vault, human alloy. Terran security glyphs, still intact. She reached out. The scanner blinked, and then, to her shock, the door slid open. Inside was a chamber untouched by time. Dozens of cryopods lined the walls, some cracked, some empty, some still blinking faint green. She stepped in slowly. Dust swirled around her feet. And then she saw it, etched into the floor in ancient Terran script. We failed. But we endured. If you read this, finish what we couldn't. Kyla's voice caught in her throat. They hadn't just died here. Some of them had survived. The commander reached her 5 minutes later. He stepped into the vault, blood still dripping from his gauntlets, and froze. His eyes scanned the pods. He saw the glyphs, the message, the names etched onto each pod's interface. He dropped to one knee in front of a cracked unit. The name read, Sergeant Harlan Ridd, Terran Resistance. Kaye presumed. He closed his eyes. They died thinking it was over, he said. Kyla shook her head. No, they died hoping someone would carry it forward. He turned to her. What's in the main pod? She gestured to the largest chamber. Still sealed. The status read, Unknown subject, Terran override. Alpha Prime. He touched the console. The pod hissed. Lights flared. The shell cracked open. Inside was a figure, older than expected, male, mid-50s, armor integrated into his body. Wounds long healed with crude implants, breathing shallow but steady. The man's eyes fluttered open. He blinked, then whispered, Commander? The commander's eyes widened. Reeve. Kyla looked between them, stunned. You know him? The commander nodded slowly. He was my captain. Reeve sat in the med bay aboard the Vengeance, sipping rehydration fluid like it was firewater. I remember the last stand, he muttered. They told us to hold ascendancy for as long as we could. We thought evac was coming. But it never did. The commander sat across from him, arms crossed. We thought you were dead, Reeve grinned. You thought right. We were as good as corpses. But a few of us, maybe a dozen, managed to seal the vault. Emergency cryo was never meant to last more than a decade. Kayla sat silently watching. Reeve's eyes shifted to her. She yours? The commander shook his head. She's Earth's, Reeve smiled. Good answer. Then his face darkened. They're not going to stop, you know. The Empire. They've gone too far. If they're mining ascendancy, it means they're building something. They are, Kayla said. I saw it in the files. Something called the Inheritance Protocol. Reeve leaned forward, face hard. That's what they call it? Yes? Then it's worse than I thought. The commander narrowed his eyes. What is it? Reeve looked at him. It's us. They're trying to rebuild Terran war tech, but without humans. Kayla's face went pale. Without conscience, Reeve said. Without memory. Just raw brutality. They're making our monsters, the commander muttered, without the reasons. We had to create them, Reeve nodded. They want to turn your pain into their power. The commander stood. Then we don't give them the chance. He turned to the AI. Broadcast this system-wide. Full signal. Let the galaxy see what they've been doing. Message prepared, Kayla stepped forward. What are you going to say? The commander stared out the viewport as the burned world of Ascendancy loomed below. I'm going to remind them, he whispered, that the dead never forget. And the signal began to pulse across the stars, across every system still pretending the Empire hadn't lied, and for the first time in decades, Earth spoke. The stars outside the viewport blurred into long white trails as Kayla's stolen freighter tore through hyperspace. It wasn't fast, it wasn't clean, but it moved. That's all they needed. The commander sat slouched against the rear bulkhead, armor stripped down to the undersuit, shoulder patched crudely with synth gauze. His skin was pale, lips cracked, one eye still half swollen from the interrogations, but his voice was steady. You pulled the nav core from a decommissioned Terra-class hauler. Kayla, hunched over the console, glanced back. Yeah, had to. The stock drive was garbage. This one's barely holding alignment, but it'll keep us ahead of pursuit if we're lucky. He nodded, a faint grunt escaping as he adjusted his weight. How did you find me? She didn't look at him. I found your signal. In the comm relay you used to boost that broadcast from. Theta. Your encryption was sloppy, old-school thought. Maybe you left it open on purpose. I didn't. She finally turned. Around. I followed you anyway. There was a pause between them. A silence that wasn't cold, just heavy. He asked quieter this time, why? She hesitated, then shrugged. Because I'm tired of hiding. And because you're all I have left. He didn't speak for a moment. Then, you shouldn't have come for me? Why not? Because now you're in it. I was always in it. Her voice didn't shake. That surprised him more than anything. I'm not a symbol, he muttered. I'm not a father. I'm not a savior. Good, she said. I don't want any of those. What do you want then? She stared right into him. A reckoning. That word landed like a cold slap. He looked away. Maybe Earth had raised more than just soldiers. Maybe it had raised survivors. Back on the edge of the Edron belt, hidden beneath a collapsed ring of asteroid fragments, the Vengeance sat like a sleeping god, still silent, watching. The AI pulsed awake. Commander's signal reacquired. The countdown paused. All systems reallocated to recovery mode. Ship responding. Preparing for rendezvous coordinates. Inside her data core, an archived recording of the commander's voice played softly. If I don't come back, finish it. But now he was coming back and the ship would wait. Not because it had feelings, but because it had orders. Rays awoke inside a wrecked medical pod, blood crusted in her hair, shoulder dislocated, lip split, pain greeted her like an old enemy. The base was gone. Kayla had escaped. The commander had escaped. Her mission had failed, but not completely. She still had fragments of Kayla's DNA sequence from the ship's internal biofilters. That data alone would buy her time. And power. She sat up, popped her shoulder back into place with a grunt and tapped her comm implant. This is Agent Ray's. Black site burned. Target escaped. Awaiting extraction. The response was almost instant. Confirmed. New directive pending. Senate is considering full-scale escalation. She stared at the stars through the cracked hull above her. They didn't shine anymore. They burned. 3 days passed before Kayla's ship found the Vengeance. The moment it entered range, the Terran warship awoke fully. Docks extended. Weapons withdrew. Engines spun softly, like a mother bird welcoming a wounded child home. The commander stepped off the shuttle slowly, body aching, breath thin, but as his boots touched the Vengeance's deck again, something shifted in his spine. His pain didn't vanish, but it aligned. He was back. The AI spoke softly. Welcome home. Status? All systems optimal. Enemy scans increasing. Satellite chatter indicates Senate has issued red-level threat designation. He turned to Kayla as she stepped beside him, eyes wide as she took in the ship. She hadn't seen it up close before. It dwarfed anything Imperial. Brutal in design. A floating tomb with teeth. What is this? She whispered. He looked at her. This is what they should have feared from the beginning. She reached out, brushed her fingers across the console. It's beautiful, she said. He shook his head. No, it's hangry. They didn't speak for several hours after. That Kayla explored the ship on her own, walking through dark corridors lined with patchwork metal, scorched walls, Terran markings covered in soot. She found the old crew quarters, long empty. The medical bay still stocked with 80-year-old supplies. The combat simulator still looping one ancient training drill from the Mars colony resistance. Every part of the ship, Told a story, not of glory of loss, she finally. Found the commander's quarters. He sat inside, alone, shirtless, old scars across his back and ribs. His eyes locked on a screen showing a looping memory. Earth's surface before the fire. She stepped inside. He didn't turn. I kept it all, he said quietly. The footage. The names. The screams. Why? To remember. She walked beside him. He looked at her. Why didn't they kill you? He asked. The Empire never leaves loose ends. Kyla exhaled. They didn't see me as a threat. Just a child. Easy to misplace. I was shipped out to a research colony that went dark after a solar flare. I was the only one who got out. I was 9, and since then I hid. Fixed things, learned, watched you. He stared. She smiled slightly. You're not subtle. A flicker of something crossed his face, a shadow of a grin. Subtle never works. She stepped back and looked at him. So what now? He leaned forward. We hit them again. They'll expect that. I want them to. Kyla hesitated. I found something while digging through Imperial ghost files. There's a facility, hidden under one of the old Terran purge sites. The ruins of Port Ascendancy. His head snapped up. I know that name, and it's not just ruins, she said. They've been mining something there. Not or history, recovering Terran tech. Running simulations. Weaponizing our ghosts. He stood. Send coordinates to Nav. She did, then looked at him. You really want to go back to where it started? He nodded once. I want them to choke on the ashes. 2 days later, the Vengeance dropped from warp above what used to be Port Ascendancy. The planet looked like a corpse. No clouds. No oceans. Just a broken continent littered with craters and metal shards. The site of the largest Terran resistance before the final bombardment. And now? Now it was crawling with Empire. Signatures dozens of drilling towers. Sensor. Jammers. A fleet of transports circling like vultures. They were digging through the graveyard, looting. The bones of a murdered world. Kayla watched from the bridge. Fists clenched. They're stealing from us, the commander's voice was cold. They're desecrating. He turned to the AI. Prep full ground assault. We go in. Kayla blinked. We? He looked at her. They're not afraid of this ship anymore, but they will be afraid of what walks out of it. She nodded. The Vengeance launched 4 drop pods. They hit the surface like warhammers, and for the first time in 80 years, Port Ascendancy fought back. The galaxy had forgotten what a Terran child looked like. Soft-featured, barely scarred. Voice uncertain, eyes too wide for a world like this, but the girl standing in the middle of a derelict comm station on the edge of the drift cluster wasn't soft anymore. Not after what she'd seen, not after what they'd done to her family. Kayla. Marine stared at the flickering terminal in front of her, fingers flying across the keys with muscle memory carved from desperation. Her skin was pale, hands calloused, short hair hacked roughly, eyes sharp and twitching as the screen blinked. The beacon had gone out 3 days ago, the one she had hardwired into the old Terran freighter, the one she had risked everything to repair, gone, offline. That meant either the commander had found it, or someone else had. She swallowed, trying to keep her breathing steady. Her heartbeat felt like thunder in her chest. He's not dead, she muttered to herself. He wouldn't fall for a trap. Not him. But doubt was a quiet poison, and it had been dripping into her skull for days now. She turned to the only other living thing in the station. A bot. Broken, half its chassis missing. Reprogrammed and barely functional. She called it Slink. Pull up the Imperial shadow net. Show me recent ship movements near the Edran belt, Slink chirped, then projected a jagged 3D hollow, 6 red dots. One vanished. Another appeared days later. Stealth signature flagged. Kayla leaned in. That's not one of his patterns. That's someone else. She clenched her fists. They took him, and if they had him, they were going to try to use him. But they didn't understand him, they thought. They could break a man who had nothing left. They didn't. Realized that a man with nothing was the most dangerous kind. She grabbed her pack, slung it over her shoulder, and keyed in the coordinates. The old shuttle coughed and groaned to life. Slink rolled in behind her, sparking slightly. Yeah, you're coming too. The drift station fell silent behind them, and in the black a girl once marked for death lit her own fuse. On board the Vengeance, the AI's voice was calm, but colder than before. 91 hours since contact loss. Target facility identified. Multiple transmissions intercepted. Enemy fleet assembling. The ship's systems spun into readiness. Cannons rotated. Drone bays opened. Reactor cores thrummed. If the commander is not recovered within 5 hours, this warship will proceed to burn protocol. There was no emotion in the voice, only the weight of obedience. This galaxy erased Earth. I was built to erase the memory of that mistake, and now it would unless he came back. Reyes stood in her private chamber again. Arms folded. Thoughts racing. Something was wrong. He should have broken by now. He'd been awake, restrained, beaten, starved. But he didn't give anything up. Not even defiance, just silence. Cold-focused silence. She reviewed the footage again, frame by frame, watching his expressions. The twitch of his jaw, the stillness of his hands. He was waiting, not to be rescued. No, he was waiting for them to make a mistake. And that terrified her more than she'd admit, because she wasn't sure they hadn't already made. She keyed the comm. Bring him to Interrogation 2, no restraints. The officer on the other end hesitated. Ma'am, are you sure? You heard me. She ended the call. It was time to test something. Not his pain threshold, his will. He sat across the table from her. No chains, no cuffs. His hands rested lightly on the metal surface. Eyes sunken but clear. Still alert, still watching. Why am I not strapped down? He asked, voice low. I want to talk, he snorted. You've had a week. Not like this. She slid a datapad across the table. He glanced down. Lines of text. A name, Kayla Marine. You want to find her, Ray said. He didn't speak. You're not the only one. Still nothing, she leaned forward. There are others looking. People you haven't killed yet. People who still believe she's the key. To what? To proving humanity deserved to survive. He looked up slowly. No one deserves to survive, he said. They just do. Reyes folded her arms. She's the last uncontaminated genetic sample from Earth's third wave. He twitched. She caught it. You didn't know that, she said. You just thought she was a survivor. I knew she mattered. She's more than that. She's proof that the purge didn't work. That Earth's core strain survived. That your people couldn't be erased, he leaned back. And the Empire wants her for what? A museum exhibit? No, she said. A weapon. Kayla's ship dropped out of warp in the rim of the dusk horizon. A debris field of broken worlds and shattered outposts. The remnants of old wars, forgotten borders, and somewhere inside it was the ship that had taken him. She masked her signature. Stayed dark. Slink interfaced with a nearby probe, bouncing scans through old comm. Boys, 3 pings, a base, low emissions, hidden 2. Well protected for a pirate den. She narrowed her eyes. That's the one. She took a breath. Ready the charges. Slink beeped. No, not yet. Just prep them. She stared out at the stars. I want to see his face first. In the hidden base, alarms flickered once. Just a heartbeat. Then silence. No one noticed. Slink's program bled into the maintenance subgrid like smoke. Kayla entered through the maintenance shafts, crawling through vents barely wide enough to fit, her clothes torn, breathing ragged. But she was inside and she knew where to go because she knew him. She found the surveillance room. First knocked the guard unconscious, tapped the screen. There he was, thin, pale still but alive. She closed her eyes for a second. Just a second, then moved. Reyes heard the first explosion 5 minutes later, followed by a blackout in Section 4. Then another. The fire suppression system activated. She stood, drawing her pistol, voice sharp into the comm. Status report. Unknown breach. We're locking down the lower levels. Confirmed sabotage in the maintenance lines. Possible boarding. She froze. No way it was Imperial. No fleets nearby, no signal unless... She ran to the surveillance room, just in time to see a figure in a ragged cloak moving through the halls, taking out guards like a ghost. She zoomed in, saw the face, a girl, a Terran girl, Kayla. The commander heard the gunfire before the door opened. Then Kayla stepped in. Plut on her arm, pistol in one hand. He stood slowly. You took your time, he rasped. She smiled, tears in her eyes. You look like hell. He walked over to her, and for a moment, just a moment, something human passed between them. Then the alarm screamed, intruder alert, self-destruct sequence initiated. She blinked. That wasn't me. He turned. They're burning the base, she nodded. Then let's not be here when they do. They moved fast, efficient. He took point, she covered the rear, just like old Terran tactics. By the time they reached the hangar, the lights were red. Flames licked the corners of the walls. "Ship's docked 4 levels up," she shouted. "Too far," he growled. He looked up, a maintenance lift. He grabbed her hand. "Hold on." He launched the lift, override code screaming across the panel. Behind them, gunfire erupted. Ray's was coming, he could feel it, but he didn't stop, didn't hesitate. And when they burst into the docking bay, Kayla dove into her ship as he fired round after round, buying time. Ray stepped into view. They locked eyes, no words, just war. Then the ship launched. Minutes later, the base exploded behind them, a red sun blooming in the black. Kayla slumped into the pilot's seat, shaking. He leaned against the wall, bleeding from his shoulder. She looked at him. "You okay?" "No," she smiled. "Good. I was worried you'd gone soft." He chuckled, wincing. The ship jumped into hyperspace, and for the first time in years, the commander wasn't alone. He woke up in pain, not the kind that screamed, the kind that lingered dull and deep, like old wounds dragged back into the light. He was strapped upright, arms extended, heavy restraints locked around his wrists and ankles. His muscles twitched with each breath. The air was cold, sterile, synthetic. A faint antiseptic smell clung to every breath like a warning. He'd smelled this place before. Interrogation bays, imperial ones, but cleaner, newer. This wasn't some rusted prison outpost. This was something far worse, private. He opened his eyes slowly. The room was circular. Smooth steel walls, seamless, one way in, one way out. Standing in front of him, perfectly still, was a woman in black armor. Helmet off. Jet black hair tied back, face sharp, eyes unreadable. "You're awake," she said. Her voice didn't hold triumph or cruelty. It held control. That was worse. He stayed silent. She took a slow step forward. "You've been very busy. Still." He said nothing. "Do you know how many senators had to flee their homeworlds after Eranis?" "Nothing." She tilted her head. "No last words? No defiance? No threats?" He just stared at her, so she changed tactics. "You know, I thought you'd be taller." Still no reaction, she sighed. "You can talk." "I didn't paralyze your vocal cords," he finally spoke. His voice was hoarse but steady. "Who trained you?" She smiled faintly. "Does it matter?" "It does to me. Because you want to kill them too." "No," he muttered. "Because they trained you wrong." That wiped the smile from her face. "I caught you, didn't I?" She said flatly. "No," he said. "You lured me." "Different thing. Still worked, for now." She stepped closer, voice harder now. "You've killed over 30,000 Imperial personnel. Destroyed 4 fleets. Unleashed chaos across half the quadrant." He nodded slightly. "So you left out the children?" "I didn't," she said coldly. "They're the reason I'm not executing you yet." That caught his attention. She leaned in. "There's something the Senate wants to know. Something you know that's not in any files. And until I have it, you stay alive." He looked into her eyes and saw nothing but precision. Not cruelty. Not hatred. Just surgical focus. She wasn't a fanatic. She wasn't a sadist. She was a tool. "What do they want?" he asked, voice rasping. She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Kayla." The name landed like a punch to the ribs. He said nothing. But she saw it. His jaw tightened. Eyes flinched just a fraction. "So the name meant something. Where is she?" Reyes asked calmly. He didn't reply. "I know she escaped one of the Continuum transports." "You were tracking her. She was trying to contact you. Still nothing. She's alive, isn't she?" A long pause. Then the commander said, "If she is, don't find her." "Why?" "Because if you do, she'll kill you." Reyes studied him for a moment. "Interesting." Then she turned and walked out without another word. The lights dimmed. He was alone again, but not broken. Not yet, because even in chains he was calculating every detail, every panel, every vibration in the floor. And somewhere out there his ship was waiting. He just had to hold on long enough. On board the Vengeance, the AI counted down. 72 hours since Commander's signal lost. Primary directive active. Secondary protocol ready. In the heart of the warship, engines pulsed softly, silent, steady, deadly. Drones slithered through the maintenance shafts. Weapon systems rotated ever so slightly. Scanning, waiting. She was watching. The AI wasn't sentient, not exactly, but it remembered him, and it had instructions. If 96 hours passed with no recovery, burn the coordinates. Flatten every station within 100 light years, and then go dark, forever. The commander hadn't built the vengeance to be saved. He'd built it to be a warning. Last scream, Reyes stood in her private quarters, removing the final layer of her armor. Her arms were marked with fine scars, surgical, symmetrical, each one a record, a memory. She activated her console and stared at the command briefing. Classified, eyes only. Subject, Kayla Myron, status, potential threat. Last known, Sector 9, drift cluster. Potential memory stability, critical directives, contain or terminate. She read it twice, then closed the file. Something didn't add up. She had watched the commander tear apart entire fleets for revenge, but the only time he hesitated was at her name, and hesitation meant value. Kayla was leverage, but leverage only mattered if it was used, so why hadn't the Empire found her first? Was someone hiding her? Or worse, protecting her? She looked back at the surveillance feed. The commander hadn't moved in 2 hours, but his eyes were still open, still burning. She knew the look. She'd seen it in Predators and in Survivors, inside his cell. The commander breathed slow, controlled. His body ached. His throat was raw, but his mind was sharp. And slowly, methodically, he was building the room in his head. Every time the door opened, he tracked its sequence. Every time Reyes walked in, he mapped her steps, her rhythm, her weaknesses. He wasn't a soldier anymore. He was a scalpel, and one cut done right was all it would take. He just had to wait, on Dominion Prime. Senator Kelvin watched the report with a heavy sense of glee. Captured, he muttered. Finally, the great human ghost in chains. Across from him, General Stravos didn't share the mood. This doesn't solve anything, he warned. Kelvin scoffed. We'll break him. Tear him apart. Find the girl. Finish the purge. Stravos shook his head. You don't understand. That man isn't your enemy. Kelvin blinked. He's destroyed our stations, fleets. He's just the symptom, Stravos cut in. You want to end this war? You need to understand what started it. Kelvin leaned forward. Enlighten me. Stravos stood slowly. You gave humanity no funeral. No mourning, no grave. You erased them like numbers on a ledger and called it peace. He turned away. And now you wonder why a ghost won't stay dead. Kelvin's smile faded. Back in the interrogation chamber, Reyes returned. Slower this time. No weapons. Just a chair. She sat across from him. He looked worse, pale, lips dry. But his eyes still burned. I have another question, she said. He didn't respond. Why her? Still silent. I've read the files. Kayla wasn't a soldier. Not a leader. Just a child. You've torn apart entire star systems for revenge. But her, you protect her. Why? He stared. Then finally he spoke. She's proof. Reyes frowned. Of what? That we survived. He leaned forward slightly, his voice raw and low. That they failed. For a moment, something in her face cracked, just for a moment. Then she stood and walked to the door. You're wrong, she said. He smiled faintly. You're not sure. And then the lights dimmed again. In the blackness of space, the vengeance began to move, coordinates locked, countdown ticking, and its fury was just beginning. They called him the Reaper now, not just in whispers, in military channels, in black site reports, even in Senate security briefings. The commander didn't just kill. He ended things, stations, fleets, bloodlines, programs. And every time the vengeance appeared in the black, someone important stopped breathing. But what they didn't understand was that he didn't care about names. He wasn't targeting politicians or high-ranking admirals out of spite. He was erasing every link in the chain that led to Earth's final scream, one world at a time, one truth at a time, until there was nothing left of the machine that destroyed his people. It was a cold cycle aboard the Vengeance. Time didn't move here, the way it did on planets. No sunrises, no moons, just black and blinking lights. He hadn't eaten in over a day, maybe 2. The ship kept trying to remind him. He ignored it. He stood barefoot in the observation hall, shirt soaked in sweat from a combat drill. His ribs ached, old breaks never fully healed. A scar traced his spine like a lightning bolt. The AI broke the silence. You're losing weight again. Muscle degradation at 11% doesn't matter. You said the war ends when you do, he didn't reply. The AI continued. If you die, the Vengeance dies. You haven't trained a successor. You haven't backed up your neural core. You haven't even set a secondary protocol. Still no answer. This mission is consuming you. Finally, He turned to the darkened screen and stared at his reflection. A gaunt, haunted man who no longer resembled the soldier that once stood on Earth's red soil. "It's not a mission," he whispered. "It's a sentence. You're punishing them." He shook his head. "I'm punishing myself." Across the Empire, the cracks had become fractures. On the planet Luraxes, a mob stormed the local Senate building, dragging officials out into the streets, screaming the names of the children killed in Theta 42. On Ravion Prime, a fleet of mercenaries defected, claiming they would no longer fight for a government that tested on prisoners and silenced survivors. On Saros 4, a civilian comm station hijacked the network, broadcasting nothing but a single image for 12 hours straight: the commander, standing in the center of a burning hallway. His armor cracked, weapons smoking, staring down the lens of a camera with eyes full of fury and purpose. The caption below read, "You erased his world. He's erasing yours." Dominion Prime was no longer calm. Senator Kelvin paced the war chamber like a rat in a trap. "This cannot continue," he hissed. "He's destabilizing entire sectors. Whole systems are revolting because of one man." Across the table, General Stravos looked weary. "The systems aren't rebelling because of him," he muttered. "They're rebelling because of you. Because they know what you've done." Kelvin slammed his fist. "We built this empire on control. And control's a lie when it's exposed to light." Kelvin leaned in. "I want him dead. I want his ship vaporized. I want his name scrubbed from history again." Stravos stared at him. "His name's already legend." "You can't kill a legend." Kelvin pointed a trembling finger. "If you won't stop him, I'll find someone who will." The general shrugged. "Send every fleet you want. Just remember," he stood slowly, "everything burns when you fight fire with arrogance." The Vengeance drifted in orbit above an asteroid belt. The commander sat in the old mess hall, food untouched in front of him. A hot protein meal from automated stores. Bland, sterile. He couldn't taste it anymore anyway. He scrolled through names on the datapad. Survivors. Missing persons. Children marked unfit for experimentation. That phrase always made him sick. Some were still alive. One name blinked red. Subject, Terran, female. Age at capture, 9. Status, transferred. Project Continuum, where? He asked aloud. The AI responded instantly. Unknown. Transfer record stops at mid-journey. Vessel was intercepted by pirates. Manifest lost. He rubbed his face, weariness setting into his bones. Run the name again. Already doing so. He leaned back. The silence pressed in. "What would you do?" the AI asked, "if you found her?" He closed his eyes. "I don't know." "Would you bring her aboard?" "I'm not a father anymore." "You don't have to be, just human." He opened his eyes, something dangerous flickering inside them. "I'm not human either." Meanwhile, across the stars, someone else was watching. In the shadows of the outer rim, a warship unlike any other stalked the same trails the Vengeance had burned. Its hull was obsidian black, lined with the Empire's newest stealth tech. It bore no markings, no transponders. It had no crew, only a pilot. She sat in silence, fingers resting on smooth metal. Not a soldier, not a senator. An assassin, trained from birth. Fed stories of the human disease. Taught to hate before she could even spell. Her codename Raise, her mission kill the commander. She had no doubts, no fear. She had watched his battles 1,000 times over, memorized his tactics, studied his ship design, his movements, his pauses, his expressions. He was predictable. Wounded men always were, and now she was following the same signal he just traced, the same lost girl. "Soon," she whispered, as her ship aligned with the target trajectory. "Soon we finish what your species couldn't." Back on the Vengeance, the AI pinged. New data recovered. Signal fragment from an old Terran probe detected near the Idran belt. His eyes snapped open. "That's 50 years out of date." "Correct. But the signal has been altered. Someone's piggybacking it. Broadcasting on human frequencies." He stood immediately. Coordinates. Locked. He moved to the console. Heart racing for the first time in years. Prep a jump. Already done. As the stars began to stretch, his fingers tightened around the console. A signal like that, hidden inside a human relic. Someone was calling out to him, or baiting him. Either way, he'd answer. When the Vengeance dropped into the Edron belt, it found nothing but rocks and frozen silence. Then the signal pinged again, a burst, then another. He tracked it to a broken freighter half buried in a dead asteroid's crust. No life signs, no power, but the signal was definitely inside. He took the boarding pod down himself. The doors hissed open with a groan, and he stepped into darkness. The halls were cold, dripping condensation, but the walls. Terran, an old human vessel, one of the last types Earth built before the Purge. He walked slowly, rifle raised, until he found it. The beacon, a small box, no larger than a lunch tray. Flickering blue light, jury-rigged into the nav controls. It began playing audio as he stepped closer. "If you're hearing this, you're not alone," a woman's voice, young, no imperial accent. "My name is Kayla, Terran survivor, born in captivity, raised in transit. I escaped 10 cycles ago. I don't know who else is left, but if you can hear this, please, come find me." The recording looped. He stood frozen. Kayla, a name he remembered. She was one of the last children born before the Purge began, daughter of a medical officer. 9 years old when she was taken. He had known her mother, watched her die on Mars. "Where are you, Kayla?" he whispered. Behind him, the sound of a pressure lock disengaging broke the silence. He spun. Gun raised, too late. The flashbang hit the wall beside him and detonated. His vision exploded white, then black, and when it cleared, he was on the floor gasping. A shadow stepped over him, female, slim, wearing dark armor with no insignia. She knelt. Her voice was calm. "Hello? Ghost?" He tried to move, but his limbs were locked. "Neural disruptor. I've waited a long time to meet you," she said, pulling a knife. Then she smiled. "But I'm not going to kill you yet. You deserve to see what the Empire still has planned." Then the world went dark. Back aboard the Vengeance, the AI blinked. "Commander?" Signal lost. Vital signs unstable. A pause, then emergency protocol engaged. Lights across the ship flickered, weapons charged, and deep within the code of the AI's core, a buried directive unlocked itself. A program written in the commander's own hand. "If I'm taken, burn everything." The ship began to prepare for war because the galaxy had made one final mistake. It had taken the last human alive. The galaxy was watching now, not just listening, watching every broadcast channel, every encrypted data pulse, every backdoor network. Footage from Theta 42 spread faster than even the Empire could stop it. No amount of censorship could erase the images of corpses strapped to cold metal tables. Or the children's rooms turned into labs. They tried to label it forged, called it a manipulation. Propaganda by enemies of order. But it was too late for that, because everyone remembered the rumors, the worlds that had gone silent, the outposts quarantined, the scientists that vanished. The Vengeance hadn't just killed another station. It had ripped the mask off the face of a monster. Inside a rusted cargo barge in the Freebelt, a miner replayed the footage again. His face was lit by the blue screen glow, cigarette smoke curling around his unshaven jaw. "Human, huh?" he muttered. The other man in the cabin shrugged. "Thought they were all dead." "They are? Guess not." They didn't say anything for a long moment. Then the miner added, "I hope he kills all of them." His partner looked up. "You serious?" The miner nodded. "We lost half our colony during the purge of Kravix. They never said why. Just security risks. My brother was on that list." He stared at the screen. "Let him burn it all." Inside the Vengeance, the commander watched the same footage, but not like they did. He didn't see it as news. He saw it as a promise kept, a job unfinished. His hands were covered in dried blood. Not from the battle, from the names. He had spent the last 3 days digging through the stolen records, cross-checking, tracking, matching files with the faces in his memory. Some of them he knew, some he wished he didn't. Prisoner logs, harvest schedules, medical results. Dozens of Earthborn survivors had been captured, not killed. Not just at Theta 42, but across a dozen similar facilities. And now he had proof they weren't just purged. They were dissected. "Monsters," he whispered. "Confirmed," the AI replied. "But not just human subjects. There are other species on the list." He didn't react. "Do you care?" she asked. He stared at the names on the screen. So many weren't Terran. So many weren't even humanoid. Some he'd never heard of, but all of them had something in common. They'd fought back. "No one deserves what they did," he said at last. There was a silence, the kind that only came from truth. "I've tracked the final 3 project worlds," the AI said. "Send them." 3 red dots lit up on the nav chart. One of them was blinking. "This one, Aronis 4, it's active. There's a fleet posted above it. Flagship-class war vessels." The commander's eyes narrowed. "Then that's where we go next." Aronis 4 was a planet wrapped in gold. Its upper atmosphere glittered with defensive satellites, each one laced with rapid response countermeasures and hypercharged energy banks. Below them floated the pride of the Imperial Southern Armada, the Harrow, a battle carrier so massive its shadow could eclipse small moons. Inside its command deck, Admiral Voron adjusted his gloves. He was no politician. No senator's puppet, he was old blood, a soldier from before the Purge. He had led the assault on Mars personally. He had signed the final fire command on Earth, and he had no patience for ghosts. "The vengeance won't get through here," he told his command crew. "It's not a god. It's a warship. I've crushed 100 before, but even he knew that wasn't entirely true, because this wasn't just a warship, it was a man, and men didn't always follow rules." On the outskirts of the Aronis system, the Vengeance blinked into real space silently. No grand arrival, no fireworks, just there, a black knife in the dark. The AI spoke. "Sensor arrays are already active. They've detected us." "Good," the commander muttered. "They're moving to intercept. 5 cruisers, escorts, no gaps in formation." He studied the display. The formation was perfect. "No arrogance, no carelessness, Voron," he said. "He's not an idiot." "Correct." He paused, then ran his fingers along the railing of the bridge. His jaw clenched. "We can't attack that head-on. Not without catastrophic damage. Recommend alternate plan." He nodded slowly. "We go dark. Let them come. They'll board." "Exactly." He moved to the locker and pulled out his armor. "Let them bring the fight inside." "Aboard the Harrow." Voron narrowed his eyes. "The ship just stopped." "Yes, Admiral. It's floating. No power spikes. Minimal heat signature. Cloaking field? Negative. It's visible, but not reacting." Voron clenched his fist. "It's a trap." "Yes, sir. Prepare the boarding team, sir." "I said load the damn dropships." He thinks this is clever. Let's show him how real soldiers handle bait. 25 elite soldiers boarded the Vengeance. They expected a bloodbath. They expected turrets, automated defenses, maybe even a self-destruct. What they didn't expect was silence, no alarms, no gunfire. Just long, cold corridors, and the faint hum of machinery. Then the doors locked behind them, and the lights went red. The last thing the boarding team heard before the slaughter began was a single voice over the comms. "Welcome aboard." The commander didn't use guns this time. He used the ship.gravity fields. Twisted. Doors slammed shut, mid-sentence. Air was vented in timed. Pulses, too, were sliced in half by kinetic shutters. 3 more were electrocuted by live panel bursts. 1 was impaled by a collapsing floor plate. The last 10 never saw him coming. He moved through smoke like a ghost made of metal and fire. By the time Voron realized what had happened, every soldier was dead. Then the Vengeance came alive. Power gun's hot engines screamed. It fired once, not at the Harrow, but at the moon, orbiting it. The explosion blinded sensors for 30 seconds, and in that window, the Vengeance cut through the blockade and descended toward the planet. It was headed for the labs. Inside Aronis 4's underground facility, panic had already set in. Why didn't the fleet stop it? They boarded it, then went dark. We don't know what happened. The scientists scrambled. Files burned. Data wiped one by one. They activated the purge. Sequence. Ready to kill every experiment in the vaults. That's when the wall exploded. The commander walked through smoke and fire. Like death itself, his rifle barked once. Scientist's head vanished. "Stop the purge," he ordered. The others froze. He raised his gun again. I said, "Stop it." One tried to reach the console. He didn't make it. Eventually, someone obeyed. The alarm stopped. The purge ended. And for the first time in 80 years, the prisoners in that facility heard silence that didn't mean death. He walked through the cells himself. They weren't all Terran, weren't even bipedal, but all of them had the same eyes, the eyes of survivors. Not rescued, freed. He didn't say anything, just handed each one a key card. one of the Terran women, half-starved and shaking, looked up at him. "You're him, aren't you?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. She stepped closer. "I watched you destroy Theta. I thought you were a myth. Still nothing. Why did you come back?" she asked. "Why do this alone?" Finally he looked at her. "Because no one else would." She nodded slowly, then smiled. "We'll fight." He turned. "No." Her face fell. "You're free. That's enough." As the Vengeance lifted off, the prisoners scattered into the forests, vanishing into the dark. Behind them the facility burned. Above, the fleet tried to reorganize, but the damage was done. Voron watched the retreating warship from his shattered bridge, blood leaking from a wound above his eye. He didn't speak, didn't order pursuit, he just stared. He had underestimated a man with nothing to lose, and now the entire Empire would pay for that mistake. The stars were quieter now. That was the thing about fear, it had no sound. But it changed everything. Traffic patterns shifted. Trade slowed. Patrols started doubling up in safe sectors. Communication between outposts went dark for minutes at a time, officers too busy watching the black to respond. It didn't matter if you were on the front lines or deep in the core. Everyone started glancing over their shoulder, not because of an army, because of one man, one ship. The commander stood alone in the observation corridor of the Vengeance. Below him, automated drones worked in silence, repairing a cracked armor plate scorched from the last orbital engagement. Sparks flickered, danced, vanished. The ship never slept, and neither did he. His armor hung beside him, still stained with soot and dried blood. He hadn't cleaned it. He didn't need to. It was a reminder, a ritual. His fingers brushed the side of his rifle. Not for comfort, for control. The AI's voice interrupted the silence, cool, emotionless. "Survivors from Navaris 8 have released partial data logs. Encryption is primitive." He didn't move. "What did they say?" "Project Erasure spans 12 locations. Multiple species. Humanity was only the first." His jaw tightened. "Would you like the list?" "Send it to the screen." One by one, systems appeared in blood-red text. Coordinates, designations, code names, all buried under layers of Empire bureaucracy. But the last one made him pause. Theta 42. That wasn't a research world. It was a prison. He remembered that name. He had friends there, before Earth burned. The AI spoke again. "Recommended action?" He stared at the name. His hands curled into fists. "Plot a course." Senator Renlo paced the war room inside Dominion Prime's inner citadel. His eyes were bloodshot, his robes wrinkled, his rank heavy on his shoulders. Beside him, General Stravos stood in full combat regalia, one of the few left who had actually fought during the Terran Purge. "He's targeting specific systems," Renlo snapped. "This isn't terrorism. It's surgical, coordinated," Stravos grunted. "You're just now realizing that?" Renlo spun on him. "Why haven't you caught him?" Stravos shrugged. "Because you're trying to fight a ghost with protocol and permission slips." The senator glared. "That ghost just wiped out Veltrax and Navaris. He's making us look like amateurs. He's not making us look like anything." "We are amateurs." The general leaned forward, voice lowering. "You know what your biggest mistake was? You believed your own propaganda." Renlo stiffened. "You told yourselves humanity was weak, primitive, fragile, so you bombed them to ash and expected the rest of the galaxy to fall in line." Stravos took a breath, eyes hard. "But you forgot what humans do when they lose everything." "And what's that?" Renlo asked bitterly. Stravos smiled coldly. "They become monsters." The Vengeance dropped out of warp near Theta 42, like a black sun falling into a dead sky. From orbit, the world looked beautiful. Quiet. Thin clouds kissed the surface. Forests stretched across the northern continent. A single imperial fortress lay nestled near a crystal blue ocean, surrounded by automated gun towers and deep minefields. But from above, the sensors painted a different picture. Subterranean chambers, cells, medical bays, unregistered labs, no civilian traffic, no orbital relays, just silence, and pain buried under miles of reinforced steel. The commander sat in the cockpit of his personal dropship as it descended, eyes locked on the growing silhouette of the prison. "Atmosphere stable, hostile resistance likely. Recommend full armor deployment," the AI said. "I'm not here to negotiate," he muttered. "I didn't assume you were." He landed 2 clicks out, close enough to walk, far enough to avoid auto-target systems. As he marched through the forested path, he remembered the faces of those who had been taken here. Scientists, soldiers, friends who resisted the Empire when the Purge began. He had believed they'd died in the orbital strikes, but now he knew better. They were stolen. He reached the perimeter fence and triggered his cloak. The gate guards never saw him coming. 2 shots. 2 corpses, clean, silent. He dragged the bodies behind a supply crate and moved in. The prison was larger than he expected. 3 levels above ground, but at least 20 below. The air smelled like antiseptic and oil. Lights flickered. Cameras turned slowly, automated. He bypassed them all. No alarms, not yet. He reached the first sub-level. The halls were silent, cold. The doors were marked with barcodes, not names. That was the first sign. The second was the smell. Rot. He opened the first chamber. Inside was a man, or what was left of him, strapped to a table, wires jammed into his spine. Eyes wide open, unblinking, burned out. He wasn't dead. Not fully. But he wasn't alive either. The monitors read Subject 344B, Terran male, DNA resilience testing. Day 412. The commander's throat tightened. He kept walking, room after room. Some empty, some worse. Some had children, not alive, just records. Just bones. He didn't say a word. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. He recorded everything. And when he reached the central database, he downloaded it all. Every log. Every report. Every experiment and every name. That's when the alarms triggered. It wasn't automatic. It was manual. Someone had found the body at the gate. He turned to leave him and came face to face with a squad of Empire security troops. 12 of them. Exosuits, shields, plasma rifles. Their captain stepped forward. Drop the weapon. Hands on your head. The commander didn't move. You're surrounded, the captain barked. Still nothing. Last warning. The commander tilted his head. You should have brought more men. Then he moved. The first 3 died before they fired. A 4th caught a round in the neck, gurgling as he fell. The remaining soldiers scattered, returning fire. But he was already moving, fast, brutal, relentless. A grenade rolled into the center of their formation. They dove. It wasn't a grenade, it was a sonic rupturer. It didn't explode. It screamed. Blood leaked from their ears. Helmets cracked. The last soldier managed to raise his gun, only to have it torn from his hands and jammed into his throat. Less than 20 seconds. They were all dead. The commander picked up his rifle, checked the mag. Extraction route clear. The AI said in his ear, not yet. You have what you came for. I'm not leaving this place. Standing. He made his way to the reactor. Core-planted charges. 30 seconds on the clock. By the time the vengeance pulled him from the surface, the prison exploded behind him, sending fire and steel into the clouds. He watched from orbit, face cold. That place had held humans like animals. Now it was dust, on Dominion Prime. Renlo burst into Kelvin's chamber. Another lab's been hit, he shouted. Theta 42, entire facility lost. Kelvin turned slowly. Survivors? None. Data? Renlo hesitated. He took it all. Kelvin didn't speak for a long moment. Then he walked to the window and stared at the stars. He's not just killing us anymore, he whispered. He's digging. Renlo frowned. Into what? Kelvin's voice was barely audible. Into the truth. Renlo swallowed. Should we prepare a statement? Kelvin shook his head. There's nothing left to say. Only one thing left to do, he turned, eyes hollow. We kill him. But across the galaxy it was already too late. The footage from Theta 42 leaked. People saw the bodies. The experiments. The dead children. The prisoners. Species once loyal to the Empire began to question. Whispers turned into doubt. Doubt turned into anger. And behind it all was the shadow of a man in black armor, emerging from fire and steel, speaking only in vengeance. The commander. The human they failed to erase. The warship they couldn't stop. And now, the hunter was just getting started. They said the human was dead. They said the vengeance was a myth. They said the Empire was unbreakable. They were wrong. The Senate Hall of Dominion Prime, capital of the Galactic Empire, was carved from white marble mined from the moons of Sevrak. Its pillars stretched like monuments to perfection, polished, proud, and sterile. Nothing here bore the scars of war. War was something that happened out there, far away, something inflicted, not suffered. Until now. Lord Minister Kelvin stood, in the heart of the chamber, his face pale, lips pressed into a line. A man who had never known fear suddenly found himself choking on it. Around him, senators bickered, shouted, demanded, "Is it one ship or an entire fleet? I thought humanity was extinct. This is rebellion. Someone must be helping him." The voices clashed like blades, but Kelvin wasn't listening. His eyes were locked on the hollow screen suspended above the center table. It showed Veltrax for, or rather, what was left of it. The command station was a smoking ruin, its outer layers peeled open like a corpse left to rot in the vacuum. The wreckage of over 30 capital ships drifted nearby. Blackened, broken. Most still had crew inside. No survivors. The Vengeance hadn't just attacked, it had humiliated them. "Why hasn't the War Council responded?" a senator snapped. Kelvin raised his hand. Silence fell like a blade. "Because," he said, voice sharp. "This wasn't just an attack, it was a message." The chamber watched as the footage replayed again. The human warship drifting through a field of dead vessels. No insignia, no flag, just silence and death. 79 years ago, Kelvin continued, we bombed Earth into the mantle. We called it a purge, a lesson to the rest of the galaxy. Do you remember? Some looked away, others nodded with quiet pride. He leaned forward. We left no survivors, or so we believed. But we missed one. The room stiffened. Kelvin's eyes burned. He watched us kill his people. He didn't forget. And now he's come to remind us that we are not gods, we bleed. The man in the suit didn't sleep. He hadn't in years. Deep inside Vengeance, the commander sat alone in the black-lit war chamber. The walls around him pulsed softly with data, tactical maps, intercepted comms, code streams. But he wasn't watching the galaxy. He was watching old footage, Earth, before the fire. He barely remembered her name now. His wife, maybe Lena, Leah, something soft. Her face played in the feed, laughing, holding their son. They were at a beach, Terran sky glowing orange with dusk. Then the feed jumped. Explosions, fire, screams, the Empire's ships blotting out the sky like flies. He hit pause. It didn't hurt anymore. That pain had dried up decades ago. What remained was colder, deeper, purpose. The ship spoke quietly. You're deteriorating. He didn't answer. Biometrics show accelerated neural degradation. You haven't eaten in 3 days. I don't need food. I need targets. A pause. Then you should see this. The screen changed. A new system lit up. Narration 8, a refueling post, heavy civilian traffic, an Imperial science hub. Why? They're hiding something. What? Something they don't want found. He stared for a long time, then nodded once. Plot a course. On Narration 8, life was routine. Fuel haulers came and went. Scientists moved through labs buried beneath the surface. Imperial agents tracked trade routes and suppressed black market activity. It was the Empire's golden child, efficient, loyal, quiet. But even here rumors had arrived. The Vengeance. Some said it appeared out of black holes. Others said it was piloted by a ghost kept alive by Vengeance alone. Some claimed it was an AI driven mad with grief. All they knew for sure, it was real. And when it arrived, no one survived. So when the station's outer sensors flickered for just a second, nobody panicked. Just a glitch, a minor power surge, until every orbital relay shut down at once. Panic came late. Too late. The Vengeance didn't fire. It simply arrived. It dropped out of nothingness like a shadow falling across the sun. It didn't announce itself. It didn't target the station. It targeted the ground. 10 high-velocity dropships launched from its underbelly. No insignia, no call signs. Just black metal and fire. They hit the surface like missiles. Inside one of them, the commander checked his rifle, an old Terran design, brutal, heavy, familiar. The kind of weapon that felt like home. He wasn't here to destroy. He was here to find something. The lab was buried beneath kilometers of reinforced alloy. A fortress. Inside it, Project Erasure was nearing completion. The lead scientist, a gaunt man with augments grafted into his skull, paced nervously. "We need more time," he hissed. "The DNA map isn't stable. If we release it now—" "You don't have more time," said the security commander. "We've got unconfirmed reports of hostile dropships entering the atmosphere. We're evacuating the core team. But the samples, leave them. The project is compromised." They were halfway to the evac shuttle when the wall blew open. The first 2 guards died instantly. The third tried to run. He didn't make it. The commander stepped through the smoke, gun raised, eyes dead, no words. The scientist froze. "You're not supposed to exist," he whispered. The commander lifted him by the collar. "What were you making?" The man struggled. I was ordered. I didn't choose this. They told us to replicate human genomes, to study extinction mechanisms. They're preparing for the next purge." That's all he got out before the rifle cracked. The commander turned to the main console. He stared. Hundreds of samples, labeled Terran DNA, some from children, some from adults. They'd been collecting it, not to clone, to study how to kill faster. He set charges through the entire lab. Didn't bother to scavenge. Some things weren't worth salvaging. The AI's voice came over comms. "Incoming fleet. 4 capital ships. 7 support 10 minutes out." He looked up at the camera. "Let them come." The battle lasted 9 minutes. By the time the Imperial fleet arrived, Vengeance had already lifted from the surface. Fully shielded, guns primed, they opened fire without warning. But it was like trying to stop a storm with paper. The Vengeance moved like a shark, too fast, too brutal. Its weapons didn't leave survivors. Its defenses bent physics. One by one, the Imperial ships fell. Some broke in half. Some imploded from energy overloads. Others just vanished, caught in experimental tech the Empire never saw coming. In the end, only silence remained. The warship disappeared into the stars. Navaris 8 was crippled, the lab destroyed. But the message was clear. The Vengeance wasn't hunting the powerful anymore. Now it was hunting secrets. Back on Dominion Prime, Kelvin watched the aftermath in horror. Another station gone, another fleet crippled. The Empire was bleeding, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what the man had found, because, hidden in the report, buried deep, was something Kelvin never expected. Earth wasn't the only world targeted by Project Erasure. There were others, and if the human ever found out, this wouldn't end in fear. It would end in fire. They called it the ghost of humanity, but that wasn't right. It wasn't a ghost. It didn't haunt. It hunted. Far across the reaches of Imperial space, Fleet Command Station Veltrax 4 hung like a jewel in orbit of the capital world Torvin. Shielded, fortified and bristling with hundreds of ships, each one enough to level continents. From this station, admirals directed legions. Colonies lived or died by the decisions made inside those walls. It was the very heart of power for the southern quadrant of the Empire. And now, it was nervous. Rear Admiral Ivan Gorat paced the polished floors of the command gallery, his boots tapping softly, his face twisted in frustrated disbelief. 6 patrols gone, no debris. "No black box pings, no SOS, he muttered. "You expect me to believe a single warship, human or not, is doing this?" The intelligence officer hesitated. "It's not just the patrols, sir. 2 cargo fleets, 1 diplomatic envoy, 4 scout drones, all vanished. 0 engagement reports." Gorat slammed a gloved fist into the console. "Then give me a location. You want me to divert battlecruisers for a rumor? For some ancient rust bucket flitting around the edge of space?" Another officer spoke from across the room. "Sir, we intercepted a signal an hour ago. It was brief, encrypted in Terran military code. Very old, but genuine." The Admiral stopped. "What did it say?" Say pause. Then a voice crackled through the intercom, recorded and distorted like it came from the edge of death itself. "I saw your fires from orbit. I heard the screams of my people through the void. You buried Earth beneath glass and fire, and I crawled out of the ashes. I am not your ghost. I am your reckoning." The room went dead silent. Gorat stared at the speakers. "Is that him?" "We believe so, sir." The warship identified itself again, TWS Vengeance. We cross-referenced it. The name matches a black project, classified, buried under layers of Terran encryption. What kind of project? Another officer pulled up the ancient file. A prototype battleship, last seen under construction during the final months of the Terran Wars, cancelled, supposedly destroyed in the orbital bombardments. Gorat leaned in. That ship wasn't destroyed, he whispered. It went dark. Somewhere between the black stars and forgotten systems, vengeance drifted silently, inside the steel beast, buried beneath reactors that hadn't cooled in 8 decades. A man sat alone in the captain's chair, gaunt, hard-eyed, scarred from collarbone to cheek. His face told a story of a lifetime spent breathing recycled air and rage. He hadn't used his real name in years. Now, he was just commander, and he didn't speak unless he meant to kill. The ship around him wasn't just a vessel. It was his prison, his home, his weapon. He had lived in it for 74 years. He'd rebuilt it from ruin, harvested it from the bones of scrapyards and dead colonies the Empire left behind. He'd scavenged AI cores from fallen Terran outposts, cannibalized abandoned tech, forged new weapon systems with his own hands. He had done all of this for one reason, to never forget. Earth had begged for peace. They gave Earth annihilation. They bombarded the cities, turned oceans into vapor, boiled the crust until the planet cracked. The Empire called it the cleansing. They never found survivors. Didn't look, didn't care. He survived by accident, a failed orbital deployment that left his drop pod floating in space, adrift among dead debris for weeks before he was picked up by a forgotten mining station. When he saw Earth again, it was a black scar. Since then, he'd lived with one purpose, to make them remember. The ship's voice broke the silence, female, soft, calm. One of the last echoes of pre-war AI before the Empire banned them. Trajectory set. Target acquired. Veltrax full within engagement window in 19 minutes. He said nothing. The AI continued. Multiple Imperial cruisers in defense grid. Estimated enemy response time, 3 minutes post-detection. Still, he was silent. Only when the tactical display lit up did he finally speak, his voice gravel, dry as a man who hadn't known comfort in decades. Let's make them. Fleet Veltrax 4 detected the Warship 7, seconds before it fired. They weren't. Ready, hundreds of sensors swept space constantly. But none were designed to track a ship that didn't exist in official records, one that ran on a Frankenstein mix of ancient Terran stealth drives and tech the Empire never cracked. The Vengeance fired once, its main cannon a relic repurposed into something monstrous. Powered by antimatter fusion cores, scavenged from forbidden weapons programs. The shell it launched moved too fast for light to reflect. It hit the outer shield grid like a hammer from the gods. The station's first defense ring vaporized. The energy barrier flashed once, then vanished. Not drained, overloaded. The kind of breach Imperial ships weren't designed to survive. Within seconds, alarms howled through Veltrax. Gorat barked orders, ships scrambled. Battle cruisers spun into motion. Fighters deployed like angry hornets, but the warship didn't stop. A second round fired, this time aimed at the docking spires. Massive sections of the station buckled. Fires erupted along the hull. 1,000 crew members were blown into vacuum before they even reached a suit locker. Still no message, no demand, just a slaughter. From a command tower deep inside the base, Gorat watched in disbelief as the warship cut through their fleet like it was made of paper. "This isn't a ship," he said. "It's a damn extinction weapon." His aide turned pale. "Sir, we're being hailed." "What?" "From the warship." "No, from the High Senate." "They're watching the feed," Gorat straightened. "Tell them this is under control." "It's not," the aide whispered. The Admiral turned to the view screen just in time to see one of their dreadnoughts split in two. Not from a weapon, this time from boarding spikes. The Vengeance wasn't just firing now, it was coming in, inside the dark corridors of the Vengeance. The commander stepped into his exoframe, a suit of reinforced plating laced with spinal-linked reflex controls. Old tech, heavy, human. The suit hissed as it closed around him. The AI whispered again. Boarding clamps engaged. Entry imminent. "Are you prepared?" "I've been waiting 80 years. The pods launched." He didn't care how many died. He didn't care what it cost. Every Imperial who walked on a planet stolen from another race. Every commander who ordered a purge. Every senator who smiled while Earth burned, they were all the same to him, and he had arrived to erase them. Veltrax burned for 6 hours. When the smoke cleared, the vengeance was gone, vanished into the black. But the footage didn't lie. The High Senate reviewed it. The public never saw it, but whispers passed from ship to ship, from soldier to soldier. A single human warship had crippled a command station, slaughtered elite fleets, and vanished without a trace. It had no fleet, no allies, no world, but it didn't need them, because it had one thing the Empire feared more than anything: memory. It began like a whisper in deep space. No alarms, no sensors, no warp signatures, just black. The Imperial patrol ship Salkar drifted above the dead planet known as Alpha Grey, an uninhabited graveyard where humanity had supposedly breathed its last breath nearly a century ago. The system was considered safe, routine, one of the backwater relics the Empire used as a reminder of what happens to species who resist integration. Captain Varel leaned back in his command chair, half bored, half drunk on victory. They didn't even post warships here anymore. Just recon vessels like his, lightly armed, crewed by juniors and washed-up officers. What was the point? The humans were gone, burned off their own world in a rebellion that lasted all of 2 weeks. Another species too arrogant to kneel, until something blinked into reality just beyond the edge of the system. Not a jump signature, not even a ripple in subspace. It was just, "Their contact," the comms officer said, sitting up straight. "Dead ahead." Massive signature. I don't know what I'm looking at." Virel frowned. "Civilian traffic." "No, sir. Military, I think. Definitely not one of ours." The tactical screen refreshed. A single dot pulsed on the screen, then 2, then 5. Then the others vanished, leaving only 1 again. Like it was playing with them. "Visual," Virel snapped. The main screen flickered. At first it looked like a shadow, an outline against the stars. Then the light hit it and everyone on the bridge fell silent. It was a warship. A human warship, impossible. "No human ship escaped the purge," Virel muttered, voice dry. "They were wiped out. All of them." The ship on the screen was massive, bigger than anything the Empire had recorded in human history. Its surface was blackened like scorched steel, with plates welded over older damage, crude modifications made in the absence of resources. It looked more like a beast than a ship. A relic patched together in rage, but the power signature coming off it was alive. "What the hell is that thing?" someone whispered. Then the ship spoke. There was no hail, no code, no request to identify, just a voice, raspy, human, and boiling with rage. "This is the vengeance. I am the last of the Terran Warfleet. To those who killed my people, burned my world, and erased my name from history, your time is over." It wasn't just a broadcast. It was a declaration, a death sentence. Virel stood slowly. "Raise shields. Contact command." "Tell them." He never finished the sentence. The vengeance fired once. There was no light show, no brilliant lasers, no cinematic explosion, just a pulse. A deep resonant sound that seemed to ripple through reality itself. The Salkar cracked in half. One moment it was whole. The next, twisted shards spinning into the void, as if crushed by a fist too massive to see. From the wreckage, pieces of bodies floated. Fragments of armor. The Empire's finest patrol ship, destroyed without a second warning. Then the vengeance moved on. No hesitation, no retreat. It didn't cloak. It didn't flee. It wanted to be seen. And across the Empire, every outpost, every fleet command, every system on the frontier saw the same thing. One by one, ships vanished. Patrols went dark. Worlds reported shadows drifting above them. Then nothing. Rumors spread faster than official reports could cover them up. Some said it was a ghost ship, an AI gone rogue. Maybe the last human program refusing to die. Others claimed it was captained by a survivor. A man who watched his world burn, and had spent the last 80 years rebuilding hell with his bare hands. The High Senate ignored it, called it fringe panic. Isolated incidents, typical until the first dreadnought went silent, gone without a trace, then the second. Then the third. It wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a scream. The Empire had crushed humanity with overwhelming firepower and absolute control. But somehow one warship had survived. And it wasn't just hunting them. It was reminding them why humanity should never have been provoked.